Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or otherwise known as 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have Erika Bugbee with us. Erika is a partner at Pransky and Associates and the co-creator of a complete online course on the three principles that has reached 35 countries. Pransky and Associates is a consulting and coaching practice outside Seattle that's been teaching the three principles since 1980. Erika joined the practice 18 years ago after completing her graduate degree in psychology. Her passion is to provide access to three principles learning to people around the globe who are motivated, open to learning, and looking to optimize their peace of mind and potential in life. Erika is married and has 2 kids. Erika, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Hey, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, hi, you guys.
Hello.
I was just saying this particular topic is particularly inspiring to me because it's something that I've come up against myself in these principles, learning this, having it help me, and then having it backfire in certain ways in the last, I don't know, 35 years, I guess, that I've been around this. And I've watched it in my colleagues, I've watched it in my clients, and I've had a lot of questions about that have hit on this topic in the last few months. So it's very much alive for me. It's alive for me, myself, in my own life in certain ways. And I've kind of watched my evolution, and I've never talked about it before. And quite as succinctly as I'm going to be. So I'm excited about this. For the people who are watching this, generally the people that are watching these webinars and that come to the conferences or that are interested in the three principles got interested because something happened for them. They got hooked at some point. They heard a talk, they watched a video online, or they went to a conference, and something happened. They heard something, and it did something for them. And that there's something either that they got relief from something, they let go of something they'd been resentful about, they got an answer to something, they all of a sudden got their mind quieted down for the first time. They realized, oh my, they saw something about thought, something about the principles, and they saw, I can let things go. I can have something affect me, and then in life that looks like something out there, and then all of a sudden it doesn't affect me, and that's happening inside my mind. And it's exciting for people. They don't realize their life could be any different, even though it's set up exactly the same way. And what happens for people is, and I'll put myself in this category, in our excitement and enthusiasm and the hope that we get from that, we get the idea that we can, oh, it's thought. I'm living in thought. I can manipulate it. I can, people have ideas that they make up about what that means for their future and what they can do now as thinking creatures that are kind of at the helm, get the idea that they're sort of running the show, or at least steering. And I want to talk about that because that does work. That is what happens for people when they see thought. There's a certain amount of free will that we have to take the understanding that we have and sick it on things, have it go get something, go get that, do that. There's certain, and so we're all excited to go do that. And it's very surprising to people that you can't just make it go wherever you want. In a way, thought is like a toddler. Sometimes you tell it to put on its coat and it does it, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's a little bit of a letdown for people, and a little bit of a surprise. And while I'm doing this talk for those people, I'm also doing this talk for the people who feel bad about themselves, that they can't make it work. They're watching people's stories and they want to have that story happen to them. And so they're trying to make that happen. And they feel like a loser or an idiot, or they feel like something is wrong with them, that they can't seem to wield that kind of power. And I want to know. So I'm talking to those people also, because I'm hoping people will see that principles are something that can be understood to some degree, so that we are hip to what's going on, but are not something that we can control, and to hopefully dispel some of the myths. So one of the myths I just hit on is people have the idea, well, if it's just thought that I'm living in, then I can just let go of it. I can, if it's just thought, I can drop it whenever I want. I can ignore it. I can tune it out. I can make it go away. So people have the idea that they don't have to have certain kinds of thought anymore, because it's something that once they realize that that's all that's affecting them, it shouldn't affect them anymore. And that's something that I'll go into that more, but that's something that we've made up. Just because it's thought, you can catch on to it and get out of its grips. And the reason that's not actually true is because of consciousness. That's why we talk about consciousness, because consciousness has the power behind all of life in it. It takes whatever thought you have and brings it to life in such a way that it does not look like thought. So there's some thoughts that we can see, well, that's a thought we can ignore. And then we get this idea that we can ignore all thought. And which I thought that. I still think that. And it's not true. If that was the case, I would feel fantastic all the time. So that's one thing. I'll get into that a little bit more. So that's one thing that people make up, is that they don't have to feel bad feelings anymore. They can corral their thinking and make it do what they want. The other idea people have about the principles, about thought, is that if I've been struggling with something and all of a sudden I got an insight or a realization, and that freed me from that problem, even though the problem's still there, I experienced a release. Right? I got an answer that came out of the blue, and that came through thought, insight. That's the answer to my problems. So when I have a problem, I just have to have the right thought. I just have to have an insight, and I'm going to chase that insight. There's a particular problem. If I'm having relationship problems, if I can't sleep at night, I know it's a thought that will free me. And so I'm going to go find the right one. And so I did this too. I still do this, where people will chase insight. They will try to quiet their mind. They'll wait for it. They'll they'll jump through a bunch of kind of spiritual hoops of, let me through a meditation, or going out in nature, or getting away from things, or they chase insight, because they try to summon insight, and it doesn't work. Every once in a while it works. We know, I have to figure this out, and then all of a sudden it comes to you. But then people try to figure out, what did I do? And that's everybody. I'm assuming everybody's. I've done it. I'm guilty. I've done that. I've gotten quiet, and like I did that for my last webinar I did for the 3PGC, or maybe it was a conference talk. I really want to get an inspiration. So let me get it. What did I do last time to get my inspiration? So you try to harness this power of the principles, because now we kind of know our way around. Maybe we can make it work for us, be a little more proactive. Let me be proactive with the principles. And so people have the idea that they can, if it's thought, they can just let it go. And so they don't have to have thinking they don't like anymore. And they have the idea that they can chase or somehow manipulate insight to get more of them. And that's something that essentially can occupy, that becomes a part-time job for people. That people learn about their spiritual lives, whether it's through the principles or something else. They get a sense of how the power behind the fact that your life is lived in here. It's not lived out there. It's lived right in here in this little section. And people have the idea that, well, that I'm attached to that. I understand something about it. Let me try to make it work for me. Let me manipulate it. And the other thing that happens for people is they feel bad about themselves, that they can't, that they're getting, they have relationship problems. Like I mentioned, they can't lose weight. They don't have discipline about diet or exercise. They can't seem to get their heads clear in their professional lives to see what direction they should take, or if they're a coach, they feel like they're getting in their own way. They're thinking too much where their clients are talking. And they get the idea that they should know better because they get the principles. They should be able to get on that and fix it because it has to do with in here, and this is their jurisdiction. And I want to talk about the fact that turns out is not your jurisdiction. And it doesn't matter how long you've been learning the principles, it's still not going to be your jurisdiction 30 years, because the principles are something, thought is something that we can catch on to and understand how it works, but we are not, it's not something you can touch or feel. And that's why you can't take it and throw it at your divorce and make it fix it. Now, you guys with me so far? Now, I want to talk about, to kind of pull this together. I'm going to talk about something a client said to me a few weeks ago. So I worked with this. She was 16 at the time, this high school student, and she had been having, she'd been depressed and had gotten really withdrawn and suicidal. She'd been having suicidal thoughts and homicidal thoughts about her siblings, actually. And she was afraid that she would get kind of agitated and would get imagery of hurting her siblings, her younger siblings, to the point where she had her mom hide the knives in her house. She just got really bad, and she had thoughts of when she was at school. Her school was right next to a truck crossing, that she would go walk into the truck crossing and take her own life. And she had those thoughts happening enough, and they were getting worse to where she'd been admitted to the hospital. So anyway, she came to me, and I did some coaching sessions with her. She watched we have an online course, and she was really interesting because she transformed in that period of time. And those were the few months that I worked with her. What happened is that it cleared up the intensity of the thoughts, the fear that went with those thoughts, neutralized to a large degree, so that she still had thoughts of the truck crossing when she was at school, but she knew, oh, I'm agitated. That's what that is. I must be agitated because this is what happens. And when she was at home, she knew, I need some time alone because it's too chaotic in here and I'm getting agitated and I'm wanting to hurt someone. And what happened is essentially the thoughts hung around, um, but she couldn't get rid of them. But they calmed down and they went essentially from the foreground of her experience to the background of her experience. And it changed her. She was complete. She changed her. It changed her posture. She changed 80%. It was so interesting because she called. I did follow up. I checked in with her, and I said, "How's it going?" She said, I still have those thoughts. Like, why are they still here? I thought they would, they thought they'd go away. And if they're just thoughts, they're like mosquitoes. Like, I'm waiting for them to go away, and they won't go away. And and it was really interesting because I talked to her. I said, well, just because you wake up to thought doesn't make it go away. Just like I used to get nervous before I go to parties, even though I love parties. But just because I knew, well, that's just excitement. It didn't stop it. And so it was interesting. She said, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It bothered her a little bit, but she realized, well, I guess this is just what happens. And then she started noticing, well, everybody else has their kind of things that happen to them. I'm not going to be immune. Mine were way more extreme than my friends, and now I'm just normal. She was laughing at herself. She said, I've always wanted to be normal, and now I'm normal, and I'm complaining about it. Well, just what's interesting is this was really profound for me. She's speaking. She had just graduated from college a few weeks ago, and she was talking, and everybody, I'm sorry, graduated from high school. And every graduate had to go up and make a speech. It's a pretty small school. They had to share something about their lives. And she said, I'd always been a very private person, but I realized, I'm going off into the world. I'm not going to see these people again. I don't really have any friends. So I'm going to be honest. She said, I've never been honest about myself or my problems. I don't know if anybody really even knows what I've gone through. So she went up and she essentially said, I was suicidal. And I was, felt very dark and very alone. And I hate that I'm overweight. And I hate that I don't know how to talk to people. And I'm going out into the world and that this is who I am. And it just really, I took that really hard this year. And she said, I was talking and I realized that I was telling it as a story that was just part of who I was, that my crazy was just part of the landscape of my story. And she said, while I was talking, I had this amazing, it's essentially an epiphany. And she, in that moment, realized, oh, there's thought and it does its thing and you can understand it and it affects, it neutralizes it and it frees you, even though it's still doing its thing. And essentially what she said is, I saw my story and all of my crazy as my fate. I thought fate was you're supposed to have a nice, quiet, normal life with just regular, whatever outside challenges, but you're supposed to be able to overcome those and have some happiness. Happiness is that's how things are supposed to go. You struggle and then you get over it, but you don't struggle any different than everybody else. You just struggle the normal amount. And for her story did not look like it wasn't supposed to be happening. And what was so cool is that at her graduation speech, she realized, well, that's my story. That's who I am. In a way, she had this feeling of kind of acceptance of that's what's normal. And when she stepped back and looked at her life, what was normal and what her story was that she was sharing and was essentially proud of, and was included the crazy, included the being overweight, having no restraint around potato chips and soda, and being awkward and not having any friends and getting agitated and having these very extreme thoughts. She said, that's just who I am. And I might be that person for the rest of my life. And I kind of get how it works now, to where if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be protected from my crazy the way that I am now. My friends are afraid of the future in a ways that I'm not. And and it took it took all the thoughts about herself out of her head completely. And the part that struck me was that she wasn't saying I don't have that anymore. She was saying I still have it and it might get worse. I don't know what that was. I don't know if that was hormones. I don't know if that's going to be an annual thing, but it subsided and I'm, relieved and I get how that works. And and I essentially her life and her thoughts about her life and herself neutralized. And to me, what that meant is that what happened for her is she saw that the path she took that looked wrong was for her, that looked like, well, that's my fate. What if that's what was supposed to happen? What if that's what happens for people? What if you don't? What if I made up how things were supposed to go? And that's what went so wrong for me. And what happened for her, the reason that it struck a chord for me is that I heard myself when I'm listening to her, I'm supposed to be listening to her the whole time, but partly what I'm doing is I do that. I do that. I have my idea of how things are supposed to go. And a lot of it I know because I can see what's normal and I can see that I can't seem to find that path among the ones that I have to choose from. And there's a lot, and it's sometimes paths that are, you know, very unsettling. And it's not normal or right, but you can't find normal, or your path will not connect up with what's normal or right. And so you end up in this path in certain parts of your life that are um, really rough. And they don't have to be, but you can't get it there. And so you just have to travel that one. And and I know if I had the right thought, I could probably parlay over to that other path, but I can't find it. It's not happening for me. And that, it was so liberating to hear this girl, 17, and has a huge amount working against her, have so much hope and freshness for the future and for her, what she was going through. And it really, I had considered myself somebody who understood who saw my place relative to the principles. And I realized, no, there's some ego in there. There's things should be this way. Things should be that way. I had it covered in most things, but there were a few outliers, a few things that I felt like either, I can see it in my clients, my colleagues, some shame or some embarrassment or some, I should know better. And that's us having fallen off the wagon with the principles. That's what it looks like to lose your understanding of the principles, to lose your understanding of the way life actually works. Is we get the idea that because we can see thought and we can see that that's what's affecting us, that we can get in there and make it work for us. We can make the principles operate in such a way where we can have life go the way that we think it should go or the way that we want it to go. That's where we go wrong. That's where I go wrong. That's where my clients go wrong, is that They have thoughts that you shouldn't, if you um, if you really understood the principles, if you really understood thought, if it's something happening within your own mind and your answers, the stress and the answers come from thought, you just have to find your way through that, and you won't have a divorce. You won't have motivation problems. You won't get angry. You can just let that go. And that's true if you have the thought that frees you. But that's not our department. Our department is walking around as a vehicle through which thought does its thing. And you get to catch on to it at certain points, and that has a huge influence. That's affected the way I've raised my kids, the way I've been married, the way I've lived my professional life. I've had moments where I've realized, why would I think about that? This person is paying me to talk. What am I doing thinking about what I'm going to say next? They're not paying me to do that. So sometimes we see thought, we can let go of it. But that happens. And it's enough to where I went from a person that worried a lot to having anxiety to, I worry. That's my thing when I kind of am tired or I'm not doing well that day. That's where I go. It's my flavor of crazy. It doesn't go away completely, but it's completely changed my personality type, where worrying is not it's not an entree on my plate. It's like a side dish. It's a garnish, sometimes a side dish. But it doesn't mean that you can take that thing off your plate. And it's thought and the principles are just something that we can understand enough to where we can get out of the way more of the time. We can let go of it more of the time. And that's when it's something that's visible to us as thought, it's really easy to let go. But once you're attached to something, the things that you have a lot of energy around, if it's a relationship problem, you're afraid of a divorce, you're down on yourself for how you are, the person, you have a lot of energy around that. It's going to make thought more difficult for you. And especially if you add on to it the ego of, I should be able to figure this out because it's just in my head. I just need an insight. And you're kind of like waiting around. Okay, when's it going to come? Where's my insight? Where is it? I need it. If you get at that kind of the ego or the impatience, the shame, the self-consciousness of what's wrong with me, why can't I do this? I'm afraid to show anybody who I am because I understand the principles, and yet I'm getting a divorce. I'm on medication. I get depressed. If you are human, you are going to have thought that is going to take you for a ride. And some of those rides you're going to catch and you can step off, and some of those you can't. And that's the principles. They are bigger than us. They were here before we got here. And we don't get to go in, and there is no mastery there. There's no figuring it out. There's no pushing it around. Can't manipulate it. It's a spiritual fact that lives. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't. Does not live in the physical world. So you can be privy to it, and you can understand that that's what's affecting you. to some degree, but it's like anything else in the world of science or in the natural world. We get a little window into how it works. It's so much bigger than what we can understand, and there's a mystery there that you have to respect, because there's more mystery than there is the part of it that we can understand and see. And so why that girl, Gretchen, had her insight, it's really deep insight at that moment and not a month before, I don't know. Why she had that insight and I didn't, why her insight was deeper than mine, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why I struggle with worry, but I saw the critical part of me and just stopped. I don't know why that happened. Because it's not, because the principles and human beings and our psyche it's mysterious. So you can take what it's done for you, whatever you've learned about the principles, whatever you've seen about thought that's helped you, you can take that and enjoy it and love it and be grateful for it. Or you can look for more. And through pressure of what else can it do? Can it do this? Can it do that? You can take that and turn it into, well, if I can do that, I can do this. You get to do that because of the principles. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. The shame and the pressure they create of, well, if I can let go of worry, well, then I can let go of criticism. Or if I can see an answer to my career problem, then I can surely see an answer to this divorce problem. You can make that thought up and it will create pressure at that moment. As soon as you have the thought, well, I can fix my divorce, then you'll feel pressure until you fix it. Even if you don't fix it, you'll continually have the thought, well, I can do that, and you'll be chasing it. And that's the principles in action. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. You have a thought, I shouldn't be having a divorce, I shouldn't be overweight, I should be motivated. And consciousness will create the feeling that you better get moving. What are you still doing sitting there? Come on, let's go. Come on. You'll get the pressure and the what's wrong with me? Because that's the principles. So that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And you get to use your free will to have a thought and have it completely terrorize you for like 10 years and not make any progress in your weight loss and still feel like if you just guilt yourself enough or pressure yourself enough, then you'll find that thought. If somebody else can do it, you heard their story about weight loss, then you can do it. And you can chase that thought for 10 years and not make any progress. In fact, be heavier than when you started and have the idea that you just have to keep, it's just a matter of time. You just have to stick with it. That's what thought can do. That's what people can make up ideas about the principles and chase them. And my point today is, if the only truth there is, what if the only truth there is the principles? Is that we think and that thought gets created as an experience, as a reality for us. And there's some intelligence behind the system that creates thought and lets you experience them and brings us clarity and answers and guides us. We're all still living, we're all still alive, so we're all hooked up to that. And that allows us to use our free will to get in the way of our peace of mind and our answers. And that's, what if the rest of it, of what we think our fate is, what we think the right path is, what we think we should be doing and what life should look like, and what's wrong with us that it doesn't? What if that's not a truth? What if that's just thought? And that we've taken the hope and the inspiration that the principles brought, and our ego got a hold of that and painted a bunch of pictures of what life should look like. And what I heard this girl Gretchen say is, oh, this right here, this life and what I went through, that's my life. That's my story. Without any judgment or feeling like she'd let herself down, or she'd missed the boat, or it was subpar. If you spoke a foreign language, didn't understand English, and heard her talking, you'd think she was describing some amazing life. And that really put me in my place, because I felt like I had an amazing life. I thought I was neutral about my life until I heard her talk. And I was a little embarrassed. Thought, oh my God, I'm doing it. And I'm giving a talk on this very topic. It's really, it's very sneaky. Thinking is very sneaky, and it's going to outsmart you. And that's what fate is to me. That's the game. That's how it's supposed to be. You guys have questions, comments? Is this making sense to you guys? You guys, oh yeah, go ahead, Bonnie.
You can scroll your cursor down to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and unmute yourself. I can tell you something that's really come forward for me as I heard you talking. When I read the topic, in my mind, I made it up that fate was just life happening. And then we get to think about that. And that's what creates our experience. But what I just got from what you were saying is, yes, and it's also that thinking is not in it's fate as well. And
right,
to experience what we choose to hold on to from those thoughts. So it's more than just what happens outside of us. It's the thinking as well. Yeah, I just really, really heard that.
absolutely. Well, I'm glad you said that, because it's you know how they say, I'm an animal lover. I love animals, and I love watching animal shows. You know, anything on any animal, I'll watch. But I don't watch them because they always show something getting killed, or and my big struggle is the babies. Like, don't touch the babies. You can kill anything else and eat it. Can we just leave the baby? And I don't even understand how they. Well, what's so interesting is that, you know, nature doesn't care. That's me doing that, and it's, to me, death is worse than, to me, birth is good, death is bad. When you talk to a biologist, they would say, well, what are you talking about? Like, birth isn't better than death. It's, if you have to have both, they're just two things that happen to a species, to the natural world. And to me, I don't know, who do you know that would say that death is better than birth? No, birth is life. It's It seems like it has to be better, but see, that's us. That's thought. And in the same way that life, that species will ebb and flow, and life ebbs and flows. There's deaths and there's births. There's thought of all kinds. And there's the thoughts that are kinds that we use against ourselves and that terrorize us and that we haven't seen as thought, and that it's all equal. It's the medium through which we get to live life. It's a gift. I know it doesn't, I wouldn't call it a gift yesterday when I was tired and grouchy and had to cook anyway. Thought did not look like a gift, but you're absolutely right. It all the thinking that we have about life, good, bad, the ugly, is part of fate. Other comments, questions?
Erika, I wanted to thank you for this, for everything you've shared and this like profound story.
Oh, thank you.
There were so many, and also thank you for the online course. That was one of my first big, lots of intense time with.
Fantastic. Great.
What struck me about your sharing about this amazing story of this 16-year-old is that, I mean, that's how she felt in that moment. And we have no idea how long those thoughts and feelings stayed with her until life happened and she, was with her family or siblings or parents, and something pulled her off. And, that's what I've had glimpses of recently, is that when I think I'm free of something and then it shows up again, like I see the thoughts that I used to have about
Mm-hmm.
that. And I used to make that mean, I don't even know what in this moment, but I used to make it mean something unpleasant.
Right.
It resulted in an unpleasant experience.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a letdown of, oh, I thought I was done with you. I thought we broke up. Why are you calling me?
I thought I broke up with my limited thinking.
That's funny,
my self-judgment.
I have this thing where I try to put, I want to have the smallest amount of Tupperware in my fridge. So I'm constantly trying to cram too much mashed potatoes into a Tupperware because I think, oh, it'll fit. And I'm constantly underestimating it. And then I have to get a bigger one because I grew up in Berkeley, California, and you don't waste food. So
or Tupperware.
And so I have to wash a second one because I have to get a bigger one. And my family thinks it's hilarious because I use too small Tupperware on a daily basis because I don't learn. I make up, oh no, I can fit that. And that's, doesn't matter how much you catch on to thought, it doesn't mean it's going away. In the same way that you understand how colds work. You go to medical school and you understand how the common cold works. You're going to get the same amount as everybody else. But isn't it a funny thing that we still have the letdown? You still make up. Oh, great. I figured it out. I'm not going to do that anymore. I caught it. It's going to be, I've unsubscribed from that thought. It's not going to be in my inbox anymore.
Right.
That's funny.
I recall a time when I heard George and or Linda talk about like not getting, still not getting something. And I was like, well, if they don't have it after 40 years, I'm just going to give it up right now. What's the sense of learning this if someone doesn't have it after 40 years?
Right.
And I felt kind of like, I don't know, just frustrated in that moment. And then, that thought passed, and then the freedom that came.
Right.
Like was immense, of the freedom of thought that came after that. Like that there's no, there's no destination.
The pressure's off. Absolutely. See, I'm glad you said that too, because it's so funny when people, I just had a girl last week do this. So she's out here for 4 days she just got out of college. She's all ready to go off into life. And, but she gets nervous about things that are going to happen in the future. And so she's like a planner. She over plans. And so she, you know, she said, she catches on to what I'm saying. It's the second day. She's like completely different person. She's relaxed. She's like, I just realized what I need to do next. She'd been conflicted about what job to take. And she said, I'm walking over here and all of a sudden I knew what I needed to do. And I thought it was so stupid that I couldn't, it was essentially in denial. And she said, it was so easy. I've been like, for 4 months, I've been thinking about this decision and I'm walking, you know, across the street and I get my answer. You know, I wish I'd walked across this street 4 months ago, get that time back. And she says, you know, so I come in here and I think, oh, great, I'm not going to have, that's done. I get to be relaxed. And she said, and then I came in here and I'm coming up the stairs and I start thinking about, well, but what about this decision? And she's like, so it doesn't shut up. And so I'm telling her about how, a story about myself that had happened, you know, a few years ago. And she said, well, you get caught up, you know, I don't know, I don't know, mad at my husband or something. I said, well, yeah, you should come over sometime, you know, talk to my husband. And she said, well, that's kind of disappointing. Like, what's the goal here? And so I said, well, that's why you're here for 4 days and not 2, you know, so let me show you how, what's happening for you is just, you know, so I kind of explained it a little bit, how, you know, we're human. And she said, well, I know, but you're so calm. I said, well, I'm at work. You know, you're paying me. Like, I can't come in here thinking about a decision I have to make like you. Like that's why we charge so much, because I can't think about it. You know, I'm very disciplined. If I thought you know, if I was sloppy, I'd get fired. It doesn't matter that I'm in a family business. Like, I have to listen. That's my job. And I said, you know, and she said, well, if you're not free from it, then then why do it? You know, if you're just, and I said, well, it's, you know, so I talked to her about the relationship of you get the hang of that it takes the threat. Your experience is not as compelling as you go through life and start realizing, oh my God, I had somebody that was waiting to get to the milk when I was getting milk out of the fridge at the store. And she was waiting. She was impatient. And so I'm trying to get the milk really fast to get out of her way because I could feel her vibing me. And I thought, you know, I was here first. And then I think, then I turn around and she's like, oh, there's so many different kinds of milk, and just this cutest little woman. And so I sat and had a conversation with her about, you know, and I realized I read into that. I did that, and I'm a terrible person, and I judged this nice little lady, and I should apologize to her. But it was so funny because I knew enough not to turn around and vibe her, because I don't trust my thinking the way that I used to. And that's the point. And that's what I liked in your story, is people make up that, well, the people that teach the principles, they've been doing this for 40 years, you're going to get like a critical mass of understanding, and then you're going to be immune from the whole system. Like a doctor thinking, I know about colds, I'm not going to have them anymore. Well, you understand them more, so you have them less, but you're still in the world of germs. And germs are a constant the way that thought is a constant. And that's very liberating for people to understand that we're all in this soup together. And we just, you know, there's a lot of grace that comes with understanding how it works. You're just less gripped. And the thoughts I have about my husband and my kids, and they're still pesky, and sometimes they'll get dark and intense, but there's a relationship that I have to them that I understand. I need to shut my mouth and go in my corner right now, whereas I would open my mouth before. It's just the relationship to it changes, but the disruptiveness of thought and the scariness and the intensity, it's a constant. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
There are 3 people that have their hand up, so I'm going to unmute
Great.
Elaine first. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Elaine, you should be able to talk.
I think so.
Elaine.
Erika! Oh my gosh,
Good for you.
I know, it's been ages. I just had to say, I feel like a poster child for everything you talked about. It's been, I had some really great insights in the last few weeks about sort of the power of thought, and got really excited because just like what you were saying, I thought, oh boy, I have more control now. I can do more stuff. And about the last 10 days in trying to do more stuff, it's just exactly what you said, that I couldn't. And then I started feeling like, well, what's the point of all this great insight if I can't do anything with it? And I got a little lost in that. So talk about fate. I would say that this teleconference today has certainly been fate for me. It's been like an answer to my questions about these previous insights and what I'm supposed to do with them. And the answer that I get is like, oh, I don't have to do anything about it. And I just feel a real sense of calm right now, because I can really hear what you're saying about this is more like surfing. My husband's a surfer, and it really is, it brings me back to it again. It really is, this is more about balancing and going with the wave, and not so much about being directional. And the insights are helpful, because just like a surfer gets more experience and becomes better able to balance with the bigger waves, so what I'm taking, kind of what I'm getting from you is that, oh, okay, now I see this a little bit more clearly. This is really just still about balance. It's not being in charge. It's not like these insights are coming because I'm expected to do something bigger with them. I'm just supposed to be a little bit more comfortable in the balance.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it brought up a conversation I was having with one of my colleagues the other day. He has a couple of beautiful German shepherds, but they're quite old. They're about 12, and one has come down with cancer, and so they're looking at having to put him to sleep. And we were talking about kind of how that affects the balance between him and the other dog. And my colleague was talking about kind of the issue of, well, the key with these dogs is that they have to know who the alpha dog is, which is, of course, the human. And he says, once they recognize that you're the alpha dog, then they can relax.
Right.
And they can just, do what they're going to do. And that's how I felt today listening to you. It's like, oh, I'm not the alpha dog.
Right.
Yeah, it's this greater power is the alpha dog.
Right. See, that I love that. And the surfing example is great, because the point of the principles is to understand, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. So those days when things are bothering you and, your stress is the highest, you have no answers, your wisdom is fled the scene. For me, I just write those days off. I know I'm just not going to contribute anything to my life. If anything, I'm going to make things worse. So you try to, just get through it, as messy as it is. And it takes the pressure off of, okay, I'm just trying to get through my day. I'm just trying to survive over here. And where I used to feel like, oh, I got to use my potential. I have potential. I'm not using it. Come on. Time's a wasting. You're not going to get this day back. And then, when your head clears, it's amazing what you can do. That one good productive day can pretty much clean up the last 3 months of whatever messes you made. You just make a few adjustments, a few decisions. If you just have one of those kind of fleeting days or a few hours, that's what I realized, that just happens. So I don't have to do that. So this other department will come in and clean it up. So I don't have to clean it up. I don't have to fix things when I'm not doing well. And it's exactly, I loved what you said, is I'm out of the hot seat. And I know I'm not trying to use the wrong side of a tool, which is kind of, I think, what happens when we get a little big for our britches about thought. We're like, I got to use it. Got to get out of here. I got to get some answers. Let's hurry up. And we have this idea that we should navigate it the way that, which sounds stupid if you use the metaphor of waves. People that surf, I don't surf. I grew up in California, and I know enough to know that, the sets come in waves. The waves come in sets. Yeah. And just because you don't like it or you understand it enough, you can't change it. Yeah. You can't. And then if it's messy, it's messy. And I think it's interesting is that people feel like, well, they can only, success is getting the right wave and being able to ride it and having it look a certain way. And I feel like, for the people who've, divorced or whatever issue they can't seem to get their heads wrapped around, you hear a lot of people who've struggled and will say, like this girl, Gretchen, said this actually. She said, if I hadn't been overweight, I would not have had to learn about diet. And if I hadn't struggled, I would not have learned this. And the people that have been through really terrible things, as we see a lot of them here, that have been through things that are just unspeakable, would have found their way through it a lot of times before they got to us, where they said that there was a gift that came out of that. Not only wasn't a something that shouldn't have happened, but they'd say that happened for a reason, and this is the reason I would not have met my husband, or I would not have felt this close to my kid, or they would say it was they would be thankful for it. If there was a humility, or I don't know why it happened, but that's what happened, and here's the good that came out of that. And that's what I feel like the principles do for people, is it allows us to not know what's wrong and what to make of the fact that it's wrong, to not be doing an inventory of how you're missing the mark, and to not know what wrong is, and not have an idea of wrong, and to not know, I don't know what this means, and I don't know where it's going to take me, and it may not be something that I make sense of or see it or have some resolve or peace of mind for 10 years, but I don't have it right now, and so I'm going to go live my life. And that, I don't know if there's a more freeing way to go about life than to feel like I don't have to know, because I'm not the alpha dog here. I'm just part of the pack. It's a great way to say it. And I feel like there's one thing the principles have done for me. It hasn't been having more control. It's been sitting back and not using a bunch of my bandwidth thinking I can control things. And then ironically, when you stop doing that, you actually see, well, I can't do that, but I can do this. There's a lot of obvious things that come to light that you can influence, that are right under your nose, that you miss when you're trying to control everything. Great. These are good comments, guys. I have a few more minutes if people have more comments.
Francesca.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Erika.
Hey.
This is such I've been laughing a lot during this discussion, because I guess it's just the comedy of the human experience. Yeah. Laughing at myself mostly, and the journey of learning the principles, and then thinking one can be freed of thought, and then
all human suffering.
Yeah, and then and then realizing I can't. This is really timely for me too, and like in my relationship, in my marriage, um, uh, you know, we, like Carolyn and I, my wife and I, we just been in this kind of period where of dissatisfaction, like a lot of um, uh, disgruntlement, I think, with each other, and um, gosh, I totally lost my train of thought. You know what? It was like uh, uh, I went on this journey around controlling my thoughts, where at first my thoughts really troubled me, and then I was like, oh, okay. Like after I learned the principles, I was like, oh, they're not that big of a deal, and so I kind of just went with them and let them, just kind of let them be. And a lot of times that just meant um, you know, just expressing whatever was on my mind, you know, and including all of my moods and all of my my lows. And I reached a point where I was like, well, this is not a big deal, so why not just like run with it, um, and but then that didn't really go so well either, and I think Carolyn didn't really appreciate that so
Turns
much.
out your wife doesn't want to hear every time you're in a bad mood.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I would be like, well, it's just thought. What's the big deal?
Isn't it funny what we make up? Yeah, if you have a problem with it, you can just let it go because it's thought.
Right. So then,
My personal favorite.
yeah. So then we were, we had a conversation about it, and kind of, we realized, well, this wasn't really going in the right direction, and so we kind of reset and made some, kind of ground rules, or that I think were really nice and helpful. So it was nice the way we were able to come up with, a little bit of a reset, or
Right.
but I think that this, it brings to mind, I would like to have um, uh, a certain kind of feeling in my marriage, and certain kinds of thinking in my marriage, and less, and I'd like to have less critical thinking in my marriage, um, and I'm confused, I guess, is like to what extent can I make that happen, and uh, can I make can I resolve to make that happen, or is that a good idea to even attempt that? Um, So I'm both laughing and I'm like a little bit kind of baffled and confused about the whole thing. Like, how much of it is in my control,
Right.
and then how
Well,
much,
yeah, see,
yeah.
that's a good question, because I think people have an idea of what they're looking for, and then they try to retrofit the principles into that to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's generally the case is that um, you don't really, the principles is something, and you hit on this, is something that you catch on to what's happening in life just enough to see, whoa, I'm just like getting jerked around by my thinking. And you'll see one layer of it of, for me, oh, I was critical, and then that just disappeared. And then I could see, oh, wow, there's worry. You're constantly seeing it's because there's so little that's visible to us, and we're so busy just being caught up in the next batch of thoughts that the last one is like 10 miles back in our rearview mirror, that you can't, you're just barely catching on. And there's essentially, it's something that it's a lifelong learning, in the same way that any scientist would say that, anybody who cooks, gardens, anything, that hobby or a part of your job that a huge amount about, you would say, the more I learn, the less I feel like I know, the more I feel like there is to learn. And in that sense, about the principles, I feel like I've learned more in the last few years than I learned in the first 30 years, because I don't know, I'm paying more attention, or there's something that happens that you just keep discovering thought that you hadn't seen before. And that's normal. That's how you want it to be. You don't want to learn, get in, and then get out. It's something that you want to see. Thought is always happening, and it's always taking you for a ride. And it's going to, once you see one layer that becomes visible, there's another layer you hadn't seen. And you don't always, you don't know what form that's going to take. So while you can put in a request of, I'd like to be less, tense, or I'd like to, when I get upset, I wish I didn't snap so much at the people around me. Is something that we can kind of reflect on, or back burner, and kind of to know, it's possible. I don't have to get so intense that I just explode. To be able to, it's possible for us to get a learning curve about, whatever we tend to get caught up in at this point in our lives. But whether that goes anywhere, sometimes you see something about it and sometimes you don't. In the same way that there's parts of my job that are difficult for me and I don't know why, and I'd love it if they got easier, but they don't. That's kind of, you can kind of put it out there, but you don't know what you're going to get back. Kind of like dating. Well, I know I want to be in a relationship and a connection, but you can't have thoughts about the form that's going to take. Well, you know that, Francesco, right? We posted a video of you talking about that very thing, that you can't, once you have an idea of what form the future is going to take, it's never worked out well. I've never met someone that's worked out for. So in that sense, the feeling behind it, the kind of the love and the inspiration of, I want to treat her better, I want to treat myself better, that works out great. The where we go from there, taking that, if it's kind of feeling like you have to do something different and you're under the microscope, that kind of thinking does not work so well. So you kind of, the principles are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and that the thoughts you have will bring you a feeling. And if the feeling you have about the future is inspiring, that will take you someplace. If it's tense and makes you feel pressured, your mind is probably working against you. Great questions, you guys. I have time for one more question or comment.
Okay, Verena, I just unmuted you.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Erika.
Yeah.
For what you were saying. I mean, for me, it's still, I don't know, something is landing. It's so rich, what you said. I can't really put words to it at the moment.
Great, good.
What came up for me was a question like, I have a bit of a sticky thought or a sticky subject, and that's coming up again and again. And it's around that I should have my own business. Like I'm working part-time in an employment, and there's always this thing that I should do something more purposefully, something more, having my own thing. And I don't know, it came up when you were talking, so I don't know if you could say something
about That's good. In a way, it ties into what Francesca was just talking about, and that you have a sense of something that you want, but it's not, we're not really the ones in the kitchen making all the all the food. You just take whatever gets cooked and eat that. That's kind of how it works. But you can, in a way, it's like, it's back to the surfing example of, we have a sense of something that we're looking for. You have a thought that's, well, I should do this. And that will give you the eyes to look for things, to look out at life in a different way. And the way those thoughts tend to come together, if you listen to people's stories about people that made changes, or Francesco's stories, I felt like this husband I talked to a few weeks ago said, I'd lost my connection with my wife and I didn't know how to get it back. And, and then she, I found out that she was going to a fundraising dinner, and she hates fundraising dinners. So I said, well, you want me to go with you? And she was like, what's your angle? Because they were not getting along very well. And he said, look, I feel like we should spend more time together. I don't know how to do that. I think it's going to be really awkward if we do a date night like my other friends who are in therapy and doing date nights. So, but if I go to this thing and you hate fundraisers, then the bar is set really low and there's no pressure. So I just have to go make it not as horrible as it would have been, and then we get to spend time together. So it kind of kills, two birds with one stone. And it was sweet because he was kind of, he said, I felt like a little kid. Like I felt like, God, I'm married and I don't know how to, how do you ask a girl out? How do you do relationships? And in a way, if we start there about relationships, about career, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd like this. And then you just kind of, I don't know, you put it in the back burner. You look to see what life brings you, what opportunities come out. You'll notice things and pay attention to things that are in line with that you wouldn't have seen before, but it's not you doing it. Mm-hmm. And that's oftentimes, for myself, that's how change happens. If I know I have to have a conversation with my teenager who hates having conversations, but it needs to happen, as I know, all right, what do I want to tell him? I'll put it together in a 2-minute, here's how to cover the main things, because that's about as long as I'll get. And then I look for opportunities, and, usually over the next week or two, he'll say, Mom, will you drive me to the store? And I'll say, yes, if I can have 2 minutes of your time. It's kind of a dance between you having your inspiration about, and having your own sense of wisdom and guidance come to you, and then looking to see how that fits into life and letting life provide that for you. Does that make sense?
Very much so. Great. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you guys, this has been really great. Your questions have been good. You're so attentive. You've been a nice audience to talk to.
Thank you so much, Erika. Really, really appreciate you coming onto the webinar.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bonnie, for doing all of these and giving people like me a forum, to talk on this level, to be able to talk at kind of an advanced, jumping right into the principles it's really fun. And I've gotten a lot out of this particular one, all of them. I feel like that. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys showing up. This has been really nice.
Thanks. And I just want to say that the next webinar is on July 27th with Wendy Sajasi. So see you then. I'm going to unmute everybody so you can say goodbye to Erika.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Erika.
you.
Bye, you
Bonnie.
guys.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.